£28 for a pie, not gold leaf, not truffle-shaved. A steak pie in a barn that was a sheep field 5 years ago. People book a month out for it. Drive 2 hours past a dozen better pubs to pay it, happily. But here's what actually stopped me. The pie isn't the expensive part, the pepper is. 10 times the price everyone else pays, because of a rule he made up himself and refuses to break. And that's before we've even got to the pie. So is this a well-dressed rip-off? Or has he built the one pub in Britain worth every penny? Pepper included. Stick with me. That pepper is only the start of it. Here's the thing about pub pricing that nobody ever tells you. It's never really about the plate in front of you. It's about the plate next door. That's the only comparison that actually means anything, so let's do it properly. At the Farmer's Dog, that steak pie will set you back £28. Down the road at the Fox at Oddington, a perfectly nice, perfectly unremarkable Cotswold boozer that nobody's ever queued for. You'll pay £26 for a Scotch pie. £2 less for a pie absolutely nobody's heard of. Pop over to the Cotswold Arms and a sausage will cost you £19. Same cut of meat at the Farmer's Dog, done with a bit more flair, comes in around £22. Now sit with that for a second, because it rather deflates the outrage, doesn't it? £3. That's the entire premium you're paying to eat inside the most watched farming show in Amazon's history, instead of the pub 3 miles up the road that's never had a camera anywhere near it. That's not price gouging. Honestly, that's barely a rounding error. There is, I should say, a discretionary 12.5% service charge sitting underneath all of this, which you're free to strike off the bill if you're feeling stingy. Though good luck doing that with a straight face, while the poor waitress who's just walked 11 miles of floor on a Saturday is standing right there. No vatty surprises though. What you see on the menu is largely what you pay, service aside, which is more honesty than half the restaurants in London manage these days. So on the food, on the actual pie, the actual mouthful, the verdict's pretty simple. It's not cheap. It was never going to be cheap. But it's not a con either. It's a pub charging roughly what a good, popular pub in that part of the world should charge, with a menu that actually changes with the seasons instead of one that's been laminated since 2011 and never touched since. Take the buffalo mozzarella salad. £13 for a starter most pubs wouldn't dream of putting anywhere near a specials board. Fresh, properly dressed. Made, you sense, by someone who genuinely cares whether you enjoy it, rather than someone clock watching until their shift ends. The soup's the same story, served with sourdough that's clearly been baked on site, not defrosted out of a bag from the cash and carry. This isn't traditional pub grub, and I don't think it's pretending to be. It's not scampi in a plastic basket. It's not a sad lasagna, reheated in a microwave that's seen better decades. It's food that somebody's actually thought about. And thought about food costs more than food that hasn't been. That's just how it works, in Britain or anywhere else. So, item 1, the pie test. Verdict, fair. Genuinely, defensibly fair. But honestly, the pie was never really the argument here, was it? The real argument is everything sitting around the pie. Here's a number that should change how you look at that bill entirely. 400 glasses. Gone. Every single week. Not smashed through carelessness in the usual pub sense. Just the ordinary wear and tear of running a place at the sort of volume the Farmer's Dog runs at. People pocket them as souvenirs. People drop them on the gravel outside. People simply forget to put them back where they found them. And these aren't generic pint glasses either. They're branded, specific to the pub, and they retail at £8.50 each. Do the maths on that. 400 glasses times £8.50 comes out somewhere around £3,400 a week, walking straight out the door in people's coat pockets and handbags. Every single week. That's not a rounding error. That's a small salary. Evaporating purely on glassware. Now think about the car park. 360 spaces. Think about what that actually takes to run. Someone directing traffic on a Saturday. Someone managing the overflow when it inevitably overflows. Someone dealing with a queue of Range Rovers. All trying to reverse into spaces clearly designed by a person who has never once reversed a Range Rover in their life. None of that is free. None of it shows up on your plate. But all of it shows up quietly, folded into every price on that menu, whether you notice it or not. And this is the bit people miss when they compare this place to a normal country pub. A normal country pub doesn't need security on its glassware. A normal country pub doesn't need traffic management on a Tuesday morning because, and this is the part worth sitting with, A Tuesday morning at Diddley Squat looks like a bank holiday. Saturday everywhere else in the country. Every single day this place is absorbing costs most hospitality businesses only ever see twice a year, at Christmas and on the one sunny weekend in July. So when that bill lands and your gut reaction is, blimey, that's expensive for a pub, you're comparing it to the wrong thing. You're not paying pub prices. You're paying festival prices at a pub on a random Wednesday, because that's genuinely the scale of what's coming through that door. Is that Clarkson's fault, or is it rather his masterstroke? Bit of both, if I'm honest. He's built something so magnetic that ordinary Tuesday economics simply don't apply to it anymore. And somebody has to pay for that. That somebody is you, a pound or two at a time, spread quietly across every plate on the table. Which brings me to the rule that makes all of this a good deal more expensive than it strictly needs to be. A rule Clarkson didn't have to impose on himself. And imposed anyway. Walk into the farmer's dog looking for a squeeze of Heinz on your sausage roll, and you will leave disappointed. There isn't any. No Heinz, no Coca-Cola either, while we're at it. No sauce sitting on the tables at all, which for a nation raised from birth on brown sauce and red sauce, in roughly equal devout measure, is close to heresy. Here's why. Every ingredient in that kitchen has to be British. Not British-inspired, not British-adjacent. Properly British, sourced and traceable, no exceptions. That sounds like a marketing slogan right up until you look at what it actually costs to enforce. Black pepper, for instance. A spice that, geographically speaking, does not grow in Great Britain, has never grown in Great Britain, and is not about to start growing in Great Britain anytime this century. So British pepper means finding some sort of domestic alternative at a premium that by some estimates runs to 10 times the cost of the imported stuff sitting in every other kitchen up and down the country. 10 times. For pepper, because of a rule he didn't have to make, chose to make anyway, and has stubbornly refused to drop, even though it makes his own kitchen slower, harder, and considerably more expensive to run than it needs to be. Most business consultants would call that madness. And in the narrowest sense, fair enough. It is genuinely bad for the margins. But step back and look at what it's actually buying. Every dish on that menu now comes with a story attached to it. The beef's British, the lamb comes from a mile up the road, the pork travels 3 miles at most. This isn't a supply chain built for efficiency. It's a supply chain built as a statement. A loud, genuinely expensive statement that British farming is worth paying for. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when there's a tin of cheap imported pepper sitting on a wholesaler's shelf begging to be bought instead. And here's the thing about statements like that. They only mean anything if they actually cost you something. A British first pub that quietly reaches for the cheaper import, the second nobody's checking, isn't making a statement, it's making an advert. This kitchen makes the statement properly, at real cost, every single day, cameras rolling or not. So when we're untie, is that robbing you blind? In the narrowest sense, yes. Technically you are paying more for pepper than any sane economist would advise. But you're not really paying for the pepper. You're paying to sit inside a business that's decided, at genuine cost to itself, that British produce deserves a market, even when the market would rather buy it cheap from somewhere else entirely. Is that the most expensive marketing gimmick in British hospitality, or the most honest one? Having pulled the numbers apart properly, I'd lean toward the second. Right, quick pause here before we get into the bit that turns this whole thing from a pub review into something a good deal cleverer. If you found any of this useful so far, do hit that like button for me and drop a comment telling me whether you've actually paid the farmer's dog prices yourself and what you made of it. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's rather the moment. Tap that notification bell too, because what's coming next is the actual reason this pub exists at all, and it's got almost nothing to do with the food. Here's the bit of this story that most people watching Clarkson's farm have completely missed, because it happened in dull council meetings, not on camera. Or so everyone thought. West Oxfordshire District Council spent the best part of 3 years trying to stop Clarkson expanding his farming operation. They refused him a car park. They shut down an early version of the restaurant with enforcement notices. They told him, more than once, he couldn't so much as lay a farm track without their say-so. And every single one of those refusals ended up on camera. Every stern letter became a scene. Every enforcement notice became a storyline that millions of people watched on a Sunday night, sat on their sofas, quietly furious on his behalf. The council genuinely believed they were regulating a farmer. What they were actually doing, whether they realised it or not, was co-writing one of the more compelling underdog stories on British television. Every restriction they slapped on him made the eventual win. And there was, eventually, a win. Temporary planning permission granted. Clarkson, in tears with relief, right there on camera. Land 10 times harder, with an audience who'd already decided, long before the council put pen to paper, exactly whose side they were on. And here's the detail that turns this from a nice story into something genuinely rather clever. The council's most restrictive condition, limiting the farm shop's sourcing to producers within a 16-mile radius, was meant to strangle the whole operation. Instead, it forced Clarkson's team to go out and build direct relationships with tiny local suppliers they'd never have bothered finding otherwise. That restriction became a network. That network became a supply chain. And that supply chain became the exact provenance story that now sits behind every single dish on the pub's menu. You can't manufacture that kind of authenticity, whatever the marketing budget. You can only earn it by surviving the constraint that was meant to finish you off. The council handed him a limitation, and what he built out of it was a competitive edge no amount of advertising spend could buy. So when you're sitting in that pub eating a pie made from beef sourced 10 miles away, you are, in a genuinely real sense, tasting the byproduct of a 3-year planning dispute. The council thought they had leverage over him. In practice, they were providing the narrative, free of charge, episode after episode. That's not luck. That's the clearest possible demonstration of something Clarkson has understood since long before he ever bought a tractor. The thing that's supposed to stop you is, handled properly, the best fuel you'll ever get for the story you're trying to tell. Which brings us to the actual reason the farmer's dog exists. And it isn't the pie. It was never really the pie. Here's a question almost nobody bothers asking about this pub, because everyone's too busy arguing about the price of a sausage. Why does it need to exist at all? He's already got the farm, he's already got the shop shifting well over £1 million a year in honey and chili jam to a queue of people who've come from as far as Dubai to buy it. He's already got a brewery that's grown into one of the fastest expanding drinks businesses in the country. Over £21 million in a single year, sat on shelves in Waitrose, Morrison's, Sainsbury's, the lot. Every one of those businesses has a ceiling on it though. The farm's fortunes depend on Amazon renewing a television series. The shop operates under a planning condition that could, in theory, get tightened again at any moment. The brewery sits in a genuinely brutal, commoditized industry where the margins get thinner every year, no matter how good the beer is. The pub doesn't have any of those constraints. No sourcing radius, no broadcaster to keep sweet, no dependency on a renewal decision made in a boardroom in Seattle. It's a business he controls entirely, on his own terms, which is exactly why he was prepared to lose £1 million buying and doing it up in the first place. And here's the flywheel that actually makes the whole operation make sense. The television series sends people to the farm shop. The farm shop introduces people to the beer sends people to the pub, and the pub, with its book-a-month-out waiting list and its car park full of people who've driven 2 hours on a Tuesday for a pie, sends people straight back to the shop and the brewery on their way home. Every part of it feeds every other part. None of it depends on any single piece surviving on its own. That is not a farmer diversifying because farming doesn't pay the bills. That's a media operation running with real discipline, dressed very deliberately in wellies and a flat cap, which means a pub employing 146 people in the middle of the Cotswolds isn't really a restaurant at all, not underneath it. It's the bearing at the centre of a flywheel that includes a television show, a brewery, and a farm shop. The one piece that keeps spinning no matter what happens to any of the others. Is that expensive to run? Enormously. Does that explain the £28 for the pie? Almost entirely, yeah. So let's go right back to where we started. £28. For a pie, in a car park that used to be a field with the sheep in it. We now know that price sits within £1 or £2 of what every other pub in that postcode charges for something a good deal less interesting. We know it's carrying an invisible tax of broken glassware and car park management that most pubs never have to think about once. We know it's carrying the cost of a British-only sourcing rule Clarkson didn't have to impose and refuses to drop, even when it means paying 10 times over for something as ordinary as pepper. And we know the whole operation is the one unregulated, camera-free, broadcaster-free piece. of an empire that a planning authority spent 3 straight years accidentally helping him build. Put all of that together, and £28 stops looking like a number designed to catch you out. It starts looking like the honest price of everything that had to happen for that pie to exist at all. So, robbing you blind, or worth every penny? Here's where I've landed on it, and I suspect a fair few of you got there before I did. It's not cheap. Nobody sensible is going to pretend otherwise. But cheap was never really on offer here, and it was never really the promise. What's on offer is a pie that costs roughly what the pub down the road charges, made with produce that costs a good deal more to source than it needs to. Served in a building absorbing the kind of footfall most pubs only dream about twice a year, on every ordinary Tuesday going. That's not a con, as far as I can tell. That's just the itemised cost of building something people are genuinely prepared to queue for. Now, I'd love to know where you land on this one. Have you actually been? Did you book a month out like a sensible person, or did you just turn up and take your chances at the bar hoping for the best? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed pulling this one apart as much as I did, there's a good deal more of British life, British food, and British old money waiting for you right here on the channel. If you're new to Britain's Best, subscribe now and tap that notification bell, because we do this every single week, taking the things Britain quietly does best and explaining properly why they cost what they cost. No shortcuts, no dumbing it down. Just the truth, told the way it deserves to be told. Thanks for spending this time with me. We'll see you in the next one.